Global Erase Extinction Month. It's a movement. It's fun. It's exciting. It's many events, and many events live and virtual, to raise awareness for animals that are going extinct on the planet. And it's real simple. We just have to get the world involved with this cause. It's not one person's problem. It's not people in Zimbabwe's problem or Zambia's problem. It's a global problem, and we have to fight it on every level in every country and the oceans. So and that's what we're doing. We're getting the whole world involved in this, and we're growing this event, which started during we were doing it locally in about 2015, 2016. We do a local fundraiser in Los Angeles and raise $20,000 or $25,000, which we would pat ourselves on the back, and every little bit helps, and we were very proud of ourselves. But when the pandemic hit, we couldn't be in a spin studio. Global Erase Extinction was born, where a week-long or a month-long series of events would culminate with a hashtag walk, ride, run to erase extinction would take place at the end of the month. And that's what we're all doing. And this is April 1st. So it's no joke. It's no fool. We are starting our event, and it's starting. We're very, very privileged and honored to have the amazing Rachael Murton from Game Rangers International, one of our 9 beneficiaries of Global Erase Extinction. And we have been working with, one of the longest. We've been working with her for about 6 years, which is just incredible. And we've been around, 9 years. So we have a few people that have been around a little bit longer, but not many. It's Game Rangers International is a cause near and dear to my heart, because it deals with the orphaned elephants, which would have no chance to make it after their mothers are poached or somehow left behind, and they would just die within a day, depending on the age, a day to 5 days. And thank God for these people who are doing God's work, that with the Ranger Network, they collect the babies and they get a second chance to grow up. And I'm going to introduce you to Rachael Murton, who will speak, more in detail about Game Rangers International and the beautiful work they do to save species. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rachael. And yes, please introduce yourself even better than I did, and about Game Rangers.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Heidi Jo, for inviting us to be here today and to be part of Erase, supported by Stop Poaching Now for so many years, as you've articulated. So I am the Wildlife Rescue Director for Game Rangers International. We are a small NGO based in Zambia. We've been operating since 2008. And as Heidi Jo mentioned, we operate an elephant orphanage project that rescue, rehabilitates and releases orphaned elephants back into the wild. And it was actually the catalyst to Game Rangers International. So the elephant orphans being released back into the wild need a safe space to live. And there's no point in rescuing and rehabilitating them unless the wilderness that they're going into is safe. And so we take a 3-pronged approach towards wildlife conservation. We refer to it as holistic conservation, supporting in the resource protection space, community outreach, as well as wildlife rescue. So just to briefly articulate what that means is resource protection really looks at anti-poaching, anti-trafficking, the actual protection of those wild spaces. Community outreach program really looks at working with the communities living alongside that wild space, to support them to live sustainably, to mitigate human-wildlife conflict, and to provide education and empowerment programs to the people living in that area. And then coming back to the wildlife rescue piece, we're really focused on giving wildlife a second chance to live back in the wild and bringing welfare to the conservation space.
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you for that amazing work. So that answers my first question. Tell us, what are the major challenges facing conservation in Zambia? I know you kind of touched on that. Can you go into a little greater detail?
Yeah, thank you. So ever since we've established, we've been facing poaching and human wildlife conflict as two major challenges to wildlife security. And then now I would say we're moving into a space where climate change is also really having a very significant impact on that. Over the last 16 years, I think we've seen a bit of a shift where when we established, poaching was actually the biggest threat, or seemed to be the biggest threat that we were really seeing on the ground, based on the wildlife that we were rescuing, the realities that we were seeing in terms of poaching statistics. But there's been a lot of good work in the law enforcement space over the years, and I think that there has been good traction made towards curbing, not stopping, but actually curbing some of the high level of poaching we were once seeing. But what has replaced that more significantly over the more recent years is the bigger threat to wildlife through the community conflicts that we're seeing. So, with communities increasing in population size, that causes more pressure on those natural resources, more people in the area, and in some places encroachment into protected areas. And so wherever people and wildlife interface, we find increasing level of challenges, because the wildlife and the people are competing for the same resources, or they're drawn to a source because of the resource where they then come into conflict. And that's been an increasing challenge.
Yes. So, wow, it's a lot. Do we find that, does Zambia protect areas better than, like, say, in the United States? It seems like we constantly are dealing with sprawl. It just, developers are insatiable. Obviously there's a demand for housing as populations increase. So is that, do they try to sprawl into the parks, or, is it relatively stable, the environment for the animals?
So I would say that Zambia is quite remarkable in how much of its land it's actually protected. 33% of our land mass is considered to be protected area, which is a big commitment towards the support and preservation of natural resources. And what we have is 20 national parks. Each national park is surrounded by a tract of land that we call a game management area. It's really a buffer zone that is still protected. It's not such a high level of protection as a national park, but there is limited land use on that buffer zone. And then it's on the outside of the buffer zone that we have open space where communities can live and operate more freely and utilize their land. And so I do think there's been a good commitment towards conservation and land preservation, but with communities increasing, there is increasing pressure on those spaces. So we are seeing, communities that were once alongside the edge of a GMA or a game management area now moving inside that game management area and taking up some of that land mass, and coming into more conflict with the wildlife that are there. So that is the challenge. And I think globally, the population growth is only increasing. And so it's a similar challenge we're facing around the world, with humans on the increase. And that's going to put more and more pressure on the wildlife.
Wow, this is a challenge. So I think what I'm hearing here is birth control. Speaking of which, what really gets me about game rangers is the education center. I was blown away. It's really one of the best ones I think I've ever seen in any community, including in the United States. I had the privilege on the elephant preservation tour to tour the new elephant orphanage with the recreation community center and education center that just provides, to education to some of the poorest people in the world. And yet they're learning about how to take care of the planet. Can you tell us a little bit about the education center and how it affects the community?
Yes, I would love to. So just to put our operations into context before I jump into the education centre. So we've been supporting in the Greater Kafue landscape for the last 16 years. Kafue National Park is the second largest national park in Africa. It's often referred to as the lungs of Africa. So this is where we started our work. It's the place where we release the wildlife back into the wild, and our kind of greatest area of support in terms of law enforcement, and where we work a lot with the communities there. We also now work in Lusaka National Park, which is where the Wildlife Discovery Centre exists, that Heidi's just alluded to. So with the elephant rescue, we always had a need to have an elephant nursery where we could look after the youngest elephants from point of rescue in their first kind of initial years of rehabilitation. Before then, we relocated them to a much wilder space for release back in the wild. So our wild space is Kafue National Park, and our nursery ground is in Lusaka National Park. Lusaka National Park is a protected area. It's 5,000 hectares. It's in the center of Lusaka city. It's fenced. But what it does is it means that we're raising these elephants in as close to wilderness as possible for the city, but it gives us this amazing opportunity for education, because now we're able to bring people from the community of Lusaka into the park to showcase not only the wildlife of the park, but for them to see these young elephants in the early stages of rehabilitation. And this is where we really see such a true value of the Elephant Orphanage, is its ability to inspire and get attention to the bigger issues of conservation through these victims of wildlife crime. And so with the Wildlife Discovery Centre, we've built a kind of a facility that is dedicated for education. So it's covering a range of conservation issues and habitat types, and information about all the different ecosystems within Zambia and the incredible wealth of wildlife that we have here. And as part of the experience of coming to the education centre, there is an opportunity to view these baby elephants as they have their elephant milk bottle at lunchtime. So there's a 1-hour elephant viewing opportunity attached to the education experience. And this has been really instrumental in getting a lot of support, but interest for the work that we're doing. And as you've mentioned, you know, education is key. It is the way that we can shape the mindset of the younger generation. You know, the decision makers, the future leaders of our country will pass through the doors of the Discovery Centre, or so we hope. And we want them to have connected with nature. And actually seeing it for yourself is so much more powerful than reading about it in books, or seeing it on a screen. And actually, for many of the children that come through to the Wildlife Discovery Centre, they've never seen an elephant before. And so it really brings conservation alive to them. And I think that's where it really, you know, has such an incredible impact.
Yeah, and it's seeing is believing. So if you ever get a chance, it's worth going over there and seeing the amazing center there. It's so impressive. So you referenced climate change as a challenge. Can you expand more on the effects you are now seeing? Why? What's leading you to believe it's climate change and the effects?
Yeah. I think that this year, 2024, is going to see one of the kind of worst droughts that Zambia has ever seen. Our Honourable President has declared a state of national disaster and emergency for the country. And although we are just leaving the rainy season now, already we're seeing quite a significant impact, with over 1 million hectares of crops having been destroyed through the lack of rains, which affects 2/3 of our population. So the predictions are that over 6 million people are going to suffer from food shortage, malnutrition, and a loss of income as a result of the lack of rains that we've seen this year. How that then plays into the wildlife conservation is that communities that were already subsisting and sometimes struggling to survive will have a much harder time to exist this year. With the lack of rains, the insufficient water sources, and failing crops, there's going to be much less tolerance for wildlife. So any conflicts that we are seeing, there'll be zero tolerance for that. We are likely to see retaliation killings. In the past, we have not seen this for about 3 years now. With the work that we've been doing with the communities, the mitigation strategies in place, actually seen a reduction in retaliation killings, and been able to, you know, somewhat work towards some harmony in the area, but with the increased pressure that communities will be under, we are very concerned about the, as I say, the lack of tolerance for wildlife in community space. Also, it's likely to then exacerbate the poaching crisis as well, with people potentially turning to poaching to supplement their daily subsistence lives. So you'll have people on a lower level scale looking to, you know, snare birds and antelope to feed themselves. It's also likely to exacerbate the next level up, where people are commercially poaching for an income at both the bushmeat trade as well as the trophy hunting trade, because everybody will be on the lookout for increased revenue from somewhere if they were relying on a crop that's failed. Kind of not as much on the poaching side, but on the illegal offtake side, that's also likely to increase. So one of the challenges through Zambia is the charcoal production. We have a very high rate of charcoal production in the country, which is used as a source of energy. Zambia relies on hydropower for energy. So with a lack of water and a lack of hydro available, then our electricity will go down, which means there's an increased demand for charcoal production. And of course, that will then be an option for many people who have now lost their crops and are looking for a way to sustain themselves. So we can expect to see a lot of challenges within the wildlife space, within the wild spaces, from illegal offtake, from poaching, increased levels of human wildlife conflict. So there's just a whole range of challenges that we foresee coming. And of course, that will also increase likely the wildlife rescue cases we're going to see as well, with, you know, elephant orphans are generated generally through poaching or human wildlife conflict. So if those are on the increase, we're likely to see more orphans, we're likely to see more injured animals as a result of poaching and snaring. So overall, it's unfortunately not a very happy future at the moment. We're all very, very concerned about what's coming this year.
Okay, a little bit bleak, but you know what we can do is we can certainly teach the locals how to mitigate that conflict. I know that there's ways without killing the elephants to keep them away from the crops. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this really falls into part of the work that we focus on. So we operate a range of strategies for wildlife conflict mitigation. So when it comes to elephants, as an example, we've trialed various different repellers to keep elephants away from crops, sound repellers, physical repellers with polywire fencing, and then we have like active mitigation through deploying of ranger teams who use a stepwise methodology. So it's shining flashlights as the elephant comes near, making sounds, increasing that to chili bombs, which are made out of chilies, and throwing them in the air to crack. And then the chili dust goes up their noses and they tend to move away. We also use pepper balls in paintball guns. So there's a range of methodologies to deter elephants from the fields. There's also working with the communities on alternative crops that they might be able to grow that are less palatable to elephants. In terms of lion conflict, we work with communities to build corrals, zero visibility corrals, which actually enable them to protect their cattle at nighttime, and providing them with a safe space where the lions are less likely to predate the cattle. We utilize an eye spot methodology where you print large eyes on the bottom of the cattle, and that also has had a really significant reduction in killings. So there's a number of different strategies that we've been employing, and I think based on the challenges that we're expecting this year, our goal is just to really ramp up all efforts in terms of mitigation strategies for the community to support themselves against conflict with wildlife, in addition to really reinforcing our ranger units, making sure that we are as focused as ever, if not more so, and getting people out there on patrols, intelligence gathering, and confiscating weapons.
Fantastic. Okay, since we got a late start here, we have to truncate this, and I want to open it up to the people that are on here so they can ask a question or two before we end. So we have one last main question, and it's the work of Elephant Orphanage Project was how SPN connected to game rangers back in 2018. As we reached out at that time, we were rescuing a vulnerable little baby calf called Lonnie. And we've supported her rehabilitation over the years, and we're so proud of her progress and her work from all those years before. Can you tell us a little bit about Lonnie and a little bit about her origin story and how that brought us together and led to some other, many other baby elephants, and just touch on some of the other ones as well. But if you could tell us a little bit of the Lonnie origin story from your perspective of GRI.
Yeah, so Lani was rescued in a place called Reference to GMA in 2018. Reference to GMA sits at the confluence of the Luangwa and Zambezi River, which separates Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. And because of these three countries being in such close proximity, only separated by a river, there's a very, very high level of wildlife crime in the area. So it's actually our hotspot for elephant orphans across the whole of the country. It's where most of them have been rescued from. And when she was found, she was watched by a community, Fungalani village, and the people had noticed that she was by herself. She was quite skinny, and she was kind of just wandering in the bush alone. And that is not normal behavior for a young elephant. She was under a year old. She should have been with her mother. After a few hours, the community actually came and captured her. They tied her to a tree while they made phone calls to the National Parks department, and they then contacted us. So she was very lucky in that she was captured quite early on, and we were able to get a team out to her very, very quickly to support her. It was very apparent that she'd been away from her mother for quite some time because of her poor condition. And actually, during the rescue process, so we sent a trailer down to pick her up. It was about an 8-hour drive to get her back to our elephant nursery. And on that drive, she collapsed with exhaustion. She had to have intravenous fluids to keep her going. So she really was at the end of being able to survive at that young age. We spent quite some time on intensive care at the elephant nursery, and then with the team even having to hold her head up to drink milk. So she was in a terrible way. And I think that was at the time that Stop Poaching Now reached out to us and were obviously very, very touched by her incredibly vulnerable situation. But we worked with her intensively and brought her through. And over the next few years, she became quite the character at the elephant nursery. And so when she was about 3 years old, we moved her out to Kafue National Park to join the release herd as she starts to take her steps back into the wild. And she's been the most independent and feisty elephant that I think we've ever dealt with. And she was a horrible handful to get from one location to the other. She defied all of the sedations. Most of the elephants, they get a light sedation for traveling, which takes the edge off of traveling. It reduces their stress. But Lani fought back and fought back and fought back, and really made a lot of challenges for us to get her to the release facility. And then on arrival, our usual procedure would be to stable that elephant overnight to allow it to rest and recover before they meet the rest of the herd the following day. But Lani took measures into her own hands. She broke out of her stable the first night, and she went and introduced herself to the rest of the herd in the middle of the night. So she's always shown us that she will do what she wants when she wants to do it. And again,
which brings us to her rogue escape from
yes.
the release facility. I must say, I'm astounded because this process is so organic, and from my understanding, they the elephants decide on their own, after they can go in and out every day with freedom, somewhere between 9 and 12 years old. When they decide to go, and start making a herd out in the park. Well, how long was Lani in the release facility? And how old was she when she decided to go rogue?
So, as you said, they should usually be between 9 or 12 before they start to become independent and leave us. That's really so that they're big enough to defend themselves against predators. But it was last year, so she was only 5.5 when she left. But a group of the elephants did leave together. So I think she felt that she was secure because she had a small herd of 6 elephants. They all went off together. They actually left in the company of wild elephants, which was the catalyst to them going. We've never before seen that a large number of elephants would leave the facility. Usually it's they go in ones or twos once they're about 12. So to have 6 elephants across age range leaving, with Lani being the youngest, was quite a shock. And she spent 3 months in the wild.
At
And then
five
she
and a
returned
half.
at 5.5, and then she returned back to the release herd. She joined up with them one day on a walk and had a very engaging like reunion with them. One of the younger elephants, Limba, who had grown up with her at the nursery, actually was seen hugging her. The two of them were hugging each other with their trunks. So it was quite a special reunion. And I think that Lani just obviously got to the point where she realized that she wasn't quite ready. And we did see that she had lost some condition while she had been away. So I think that was enough for her to realize that she still needed extra support. So she's been back with us now for just over, well, no, it'll be just under a year. So about 11 months that she's been back amongst the release herd. And she fits in very well. She's one of 10. There are 10 elephants at the release facility. She's now collared. So she wears a collar. We have tracking collars, satellite collars
Thank
for
God. Thank you, God.
as many of the elephants as possible as part of our post-release monitoring strategy. So before we were collaring just the larger elephants who were likely to leave, because it's very important to us to understand once they've gone and we can't see them anymore, where they are they safe, are they integrating with wild elephants, are they behaving like a wild elephant should, because we need to know that this project is actually working and that we are enabling elephants to truly live back in the wild as healthy wild individuals. But so the trouble with the collars previously was they were too heavy for the younger elephants, and we're now trialing a new style of collar which is much lighter weight. So almost the moment that Lani returned to the release facility, we were very keen to get a collar on her, knowing that she's very wily and we have no idea when she might decide to leave again.
Now, I want to ask you about the collars because that's very interesting. It seems like it would be like on a tag on their ear or something like that. Isn't a collar kind of intrusive? I mean, you mentioned the heavier ones. Isn't it intrusive and they're going to wear it, the rest of their life, is that cumbersome?
So they are big. Unfortunately, there currently isn't another option for elephants if you want to monitor them in the wild. The satellite collars, they obviously are transmitting to a satellite. And so the energy that they require, it's the batteries inside the device that are quite heavy. And so if we had smaller collars, they just wouldn't last for as long. What we do is we fit the collars and we aim for them to last for about 2 years. And then our goal is to replace them or remove them before the batteries have worn away. And we have them set so that every hour we get a reading. So we have a GPS location on these elephants' movements, 24 locations a day. And that allows us to track their movements with quite some level of detail and see what they're doing and where they're going. And what's been super exciting is where we've been collaring wild elephants, and we can actually then prove wild elephants and orphaned elephants are together if you get 2 collars married up in the same space, which has happened and is happening right now with one of the elephants. It's very exciting to see. But yeah, we will always ensure that those collars will be removed before either the elephant has grown, because in this young stage, they're growing quite rapidly. So we're very aware that we can't keep them on for too many years because otherwise they would become strangulated. So we're very conscious of the amount of space they have when they're fitted and also keeping a check on them so that we can remove them before they get too old.
Okay, I would love to open this up. If there's anyone that has a question, we're gonna unmute. You can turn all muted. Let me see. Hal, I might need your help with this to allow anybody. Does anybody have a hand raise if they have a question? See any hand raises. Normally Jen is on and she asks if they can message in. Okay. Does anybody have can you message in anyone? Okay. Do we see that message? Okay, I'm looking right where the messages are. Okay, let everybody message. Anyone have a message? Okay, so let's end on what one of the latest rescues, because I know well, I say the last two rescues, including Mataya, because that was pretty eventful. And Stop Poaching Now got the call from you about a year ago about this brave little elephant that was likely to perish. You want to tell us a little bit about Mataya's story?
Yes, so Mataya was rescued when he was about, I think it was 2 months old. No, a month old. Very, very young and still almost quite pink on his skin. He was part of a human-elephant conflict challenge that had happened just off the Zambezi River. There was a sort of a large commotion. Elephants were being chased from the scene. And in this particular instance, he had actually been attacked. And there was some concern that they had wanted to eat him as meat, I guess, in compensation for the loss of crops. There was a severe amount of crop damage done in that area. Community members intervened, and obviously elephants are protected, and many people do know this. And so the Department of National Parks and Wildlife were called in, and the rangers there actually came very quickly and responded to the community and actually took the baby elephant away. So we were contacted as the elephant was being captured, and he was transported to Lusaka National Park, where we were able to then stabilize him and bring him back to health. He had not been away from his mother for very long because of the nature of this horrific incident that happened. But because he was so young and he'd been through a huge amount of trauma and stress, obviously that really did compromise his system. But we managed to hydrate him and get him going and raise him up. And he's now a significant member of the nursery herd in Lusaka National Park.
I wanted to do a shout out to one. So when I got the call from Rachel, and we'd just had a visit recently with her and had been able to bring some of our donors and sponsors to see this amazing facility and actually fly to the release facility as well as the orphanage. And one of our amazing sponsors, Raquel, was the first one to just say, jump up and say, yes, I'm going to save this baby elephant. And, she'd already been sponsoring 5 other elephants, but she kind of made Mataya her own via Stop Poaching Now. So we just have amazing, amazing people that are connected with us. And we do, direct donations to GRI through us. So that, people in the United States get the tax benefit, and, we share in the just the glory of saving a life like this. And I really want to just thank Raquel and all of our sponsors for amazing support to us so that we can in turn save these babies. And so we're very grateful. The relationship amongst us has grown and tightened, and I think GRI is really, really one of the most special organizations with a lot of heart, a lot of soul, and they do what they say they're going to do, and they're very good at what they do. And we couldn't be more proud to be partners with them as one of their biggest partners. There we come in. I don't know what our ranking is. What is our ranking? 4th or 5th amongst your major donors? Or what is SPN? I'm sorry, it kind of fluctuates like the stock market, depending. But as of 2022, we were number 4 or 5. Then 4. Amazing. We're gonna get to number 1. it's a healthy competition. We just have to raise more to help these animals. So thank you everyone for being here today, and for those live with Rachael Murton. And if you didn't get to be live, hopefully you're watching this now on our Facebook channel, where it was supposed to be, but it's going to go on now. So thank you so much, Rachael, for being on, and everybody for being on. And so excited that you were the one to kick off Global Erase Extinction. We will also profile other one-on-one with other beneficiaries this month, little surprises, and we will have a major beneficiary panel on the 13th. Is that correct? Yes, on the 13th, Rachael will be coming back along with the other beneficiaries, because it takes a village to save an elephant, to raise an elephant, to save a tiger. It takes a village. So we bring the village together with Stop Poaching Now, and we like all our beneficiaries to be together in this. And that's why we created this event, because that way it's the spirit of everybody pulling together and trying to make this event great, because we know at someday, if we keep doing our jobs right, we can raise millions of dollars a year, which can help so many animals. And I really am so grateful to our original, including GRI, our originals that believed in the concept and said, it wasn't about what can you do for our organization. It was the attitude of what can you do for all organizations that are really doing the legitimate work. Because we don't care, if it's a pangolin, a zebra, a whale, a porpoise, they're all, an elephant, a tiger, a clouded snow leopard, they're all going extinct. We have to do something about it. So thank you for being a part of this great movement, Rachael, and thanks for being here today.
And I'd just like to thank you so much for inviting me and Game Rangers International to be part of the movement, and for supporting us for the last 6 years. And it really has been an incredible journey together. And you have been and are a significant part of the work that we're doing. I think that Stop Poaching Now has an incredible opportunity to reach out to gain the support that we need for the wildlife. And we really wouldn't be able to achieve all the amazing work that we do without you. So just want to say a huge thank you to Stop Poaching Now and all of your supporters, because it makes so much difference. And yeah, we mean it from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And live from Palm Beach and Lusaka, Zambia, we just want to say thank you, and we'll see you on the 13th, if not before. Don't forget, there's an event on April 7th. April 7th is our first live event in New York. Lady Sings the Blues event. If you haven't gotten your tickets, get your tickets now. It's going to be fun. There's 3 major parties: New York, Palm Beach, Beverly Hills, and also in Africa. There'll be a big party on the 27th as well, right? Where we walk right on. Amazing. Okay, more to come. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy. Have a blessed day. Bye.